Hey everybody, I'm Rowan. Welcome back to the Angry Dome, and it's time for another mix breakdown. Today, we're doing this one. So that is the song Windmills Do Not Work That Way.
Windmills do not work that way! Good night!
Off the Death by Snu Snu EP that's out on all streaming services now, so you can check it out. Links will be in the description below. But with that out of the way, let's jump right into the good stuff. So here we are in FL Studio in the session for this song. I'm going to start with the master bus processing and move my way through all of the various elements of the song, breaking down as some of the techniques and tricks that I've used to get the sounds that I want. There's definitely going to be a few things here that are in common with the other mix breakdown video that I've done. That one was for the track Come Back When It's a Catastrophe. I'll still go through those things in this video, just maybe not in quite as much detail. So I'll throw a card up here somewhere for that other video, so please feel free to go and check that out if there's a section of this video that you'd like to hear more detail on. I'll call those out as we go through, and as with the other video, I'm going to put chapters down below so you can zero in on the part that you're most interested in. Let's dive in. So we'll start here on the master bus. My master bus processing doesn't really change much from mix to mix. I generally load up the same plugins using similar settings and just tweak slightly to get them to suit the specific song and composition and all of that. So I'll turn them all off here and run through point by point. I'm going to leave this instance of Fruity Limiter on. All that's doing is giving a bit of level just to make it all a bit easier to work with in the edit, particularly with the mastering chain off with Ozone there. So starting from top to bottom, I'm going to bring up this instance of the good old SSL bus compressor. And this is using a trick that is super, super common. It's used by tons of engineers and producers. And what we're doing here is running a pretty fast attack, quickest possible release on a 4:1 ratio, and setting the sidechain filter so that the compressor is primarily reacting to the snare hits. So we're looking for about 3 to 4 dB of gain reduction on the snare hits mostly. And what that's doing is shaping the transient of the snare, but because it's acting on the whole mix, it's also ducking the mix at the same time. So the volume of the overall mix comes down whilst the snare's getting shaped. And the end result is that it sounds almost like the mix is really quickly ducking behind the snare. So it lets the snare sit on top of the mix and really cut through, but without it being overly pokey or without having to rely on particularly aggressive EQ or transient shaping. So I'm going to start with that one off and toggle it on and off, and you'll hear that this is doing a lot of work. Without this mix kind of starts to fall apart. So this is really critical. So you can hear a really big difference there. It just, in addition to kind of bringing things together, it's really just getting that snare to sit so nicely across the rest of the mix. That is, without a doubt, the most critical part of this whole chain, perhaps apart from the mastering in Ozone. So yeah, really, really great trick. As I've said in the other video, that kind of felt like a cheat code when I learned that. Just such an easy way to get snares sitting in a mix and on top of a mix, particularly if it's a really dense mix. You basically just make it so your snare's really popping and cutting through. Drop this on and it smooths it out. Instantly brings it all together. Really, really love that. Next up, we've got an instance of one of my favorite plugins, which is JST Heat from Joey Sturgis Tones. In many ways, this is kind of like a budget FabFilter Satin. It does all the things I would want a multiband saturator to do, so I don't feel limited by it, but comes at a fraction of the price. And I use this on a whole bunch of different things. It's super, super flexible. In this particular instance, all we're doing with it is using it like a virtual tape machine, really. I've got it loaded up on this preset called JST Tape, and I haven't even touched the settings. This is how it comes when you load up the preset. It's just a really nice little bit of added warmth in the kind of low mids and bottom ends. It adds a bit of sparkle and sizzle on the top end in that really nice kind of analog way. It gives you that bit of extra crispness without it sounding harsh. So as with before, I'll turn this one off and on, and you can hear the difference. It's a bit more subtle. I'd say a lot more subtle than the SSL, but still adds a really, really nice character to the overall sound. So definitely subtle, but noticeable. I feel like it's one of those ones that you're not going to immediately hear it listening going, oh, it's got some tape saturation on it, but take it away and the mix definitely feels like it's better off with it. So yeah, you'll see this plugin crop up all over the place in my mixes, but it's always there on the master bus to give us that nice little bit of extra, pseudo or fake analog warmth, I guess. Next up, we've got an instance of gross beat. That's used at one point in the song to do a kind of tape stop effect. I'll just play that now so you can hear what it's doing, turning it on and off with automation. And this is one of the things that the gross beat is just amazing at. It does these kind of weird time warping effects. So I'll pop it on here. I'm pretty sure, yeah. So you'll see we've got the automation for it here. And this is the effect that we're using it for. I'll bring the mixer up so you can see where it's coming on and off if you just look around over here. So that's all it's doing, just that tape stop. I'll play it one more time with the plugin open. It's a really simple setting here. We're just using the time warping with this kind of curve on it. And that's it. So that's all that's doing. Don't get too caught up in that. Just a fun little tape stop effect. Next up in the chain, as I said, we've got Fruity Limiter here, which actually I'm going to pop down a level. And next up in our actual processing chain, we've got another instance of the SSL compressor. This one is doing more of a traditional bus compressor role. Now this one's doing a bit more of a traditional bus compressor role, really just adding a bit of glue, bringing everything together, little bit of level control going into the mastering chain, but mostly just a little bit of a tightener, just kind of bringing everything together. Occupying the same sonic space, so very much more of a traditional bus compressor application. I've still got the sidechain filter on there, a little bit lower than we had for the first instance, and that's just to avoid any kind of pumping. There's a lot of quite quick and aggressive action going on down the bottom with the kick drums, so just really wanted to avoid any kind of pumping or overwhelming of the low end going into the compressor there. This one again, we're running on a 4:1 ratio. Slowest possible attack and slowest possible release, aside from auto. I'll play this one, and yeah, you'll hear it's a much more subtle effect. Mostly you'll probably hear the level difference, but try to listen to the tonality. It does, it does a really nice job of just sort of subtly gluing everything together, which is obviously what you want your bus compressor to be doing. Yeah, so much more subtle effect, but still I think really useful. And the goal here is basically just to get that needle kind of floating around the 2 to 3 dB mark. You don't want it jumping around too aggressively. That's when you're going to get kind of pumping effects. It's really just there to keep it in the zone and really make sure we've got a nice steady signal going into the mastering chain. So I'll come back at the end of the video and we'll look at the mastering, and now we'll jump into looking at the individual elements of the song and what goes into making this particular brand of chaos. So looking firstly at what I call the drum and bass bits, basically the drum and bass percussion loops or drum and bass inspired percussion loops that run through pretty much the whole song and provide a little nod to the drum and bass influence of the rhythms and kind of overall groove and tempos as well of these songs. I've used FL Studio's Loop Starter in all of these songs to get myself going. I'm not a drum and bass producer by any stretch. I'm learning bits and pieces here and there, but I'm not quite handy enough to go jumping off the deep end. And this just gives me instant access to a library of samples and loops that I've got access to using even just the free version of FL Cloud and the standard sample pack that FL Studio comes with. So that's all I'm using to generate these loops. And after re-rolling a whole bunch, this is what I came up with for this song. I'll play the drum and bass percussion just by itself. We've got it all over here, just running into the D&B perk bus here. And this is more or less similar throughout the whole song. A few changes here and there that we'll get to, but it sounds like this. So really quite subtle in a lot of ways. It's when you throw it in with everything else, it's there, but it's providing more of a kind of backseat. I like to feel as a bit of a momentum driver. It keeps that movement pushing forward. There's always something doing or something going on. Those little kind of shuffles and kicks into next sections, next repeats of the loop, I think really help move things forward consistently. What I'll do is I'll play the whole mix and I'll turn this bass off and on, and you'll hear what it gives in the more busy sections, and then I'll play another section of the song where there's gaps for it to sit in, and I think that's where it really shines. So around this main riff, here's what it's doing. So you can hear there it's really giving a lot more kind of excitement and interest to the top end, and keeping, like I said, keeping that momentum going. Where it really shines is when we have gaps. So for example, here in this this sort of verse, where we've got these more staccato kind of gallopy rhythms. Sort of works in and around the drums a little bit there. And then in particular, when we get to later in the song where we have these quite significant gaps, and it's really there to, it's sort of almost, even though I'm not automating or anything, it comes up and kind of fills the space there. So you can see there, because it's the only percussion element happening there, it really does sort of step up and keep the song moving forward. Like I said, keep that momentum. That's really what I love about those particular drum and bass rhythms. They're really movement focused. They propel the song forward. So that's definitely what I'm chasing with these loops. As far as what the loops consist of, we've got the usual kind of drum and bass break. So we've got that running in pretty much all sections. And what I've done is filter off a lot of the low end. So the loop itself actually sounds like this. But because I'm blending that in with the other drums and a lot of other low end stuff, I really didn't need all that low end from the kick. Then we have a top loop here, which sounds like this. And this one we're EQing quite aggressively. I really just wanted to try and isolate this one to get that consistent kind of 16th note feel. So without the EQ, this one sounds like this. So you can see the EQ really thins it out there, which is what I needed. There's a lot going on in the mids in this track, and a lot going on in particularly the high mids. So really needed to control that to get that to do what I wanted. Again, just pushing everything towards the top end where there was space for these elements to shine. We also have this kick sample going, which doesn't have any processing on it. This is just being layered in, and it's following the kick from the actual drum, so it's reinforcing that a little bit. It sounds like this. So you can see it's quite clicky. It does have a little bit of bottom end on it, a little bit of particularly kind of low mid beef, but mostly it's a sort of quite a clicky sample, which works really nicely with the drum kit that I'm using in this track. And all of those are running through the D&B perk bus here, which has a few plugins on it. Again, these are all just being used for a specific effect in one part of the song. I'll show you where that is. It's immediately after that tape stop effect that we were doing with Gross Beat. And I'll play it here and you'll hear what we're doing. So in a nutshell, we are turning on an instance of Fruity Wave Shaper, an EQ that's filtering off pretty much all of the top end down to about 5K, and an instance of good old Fruity Reverb, just kind of chucking it in a room to get a nice kind of, I guess, kind of dirty reverb sound, I guess. Fruity Reverb is not a bad reverb plugin. It's just kind of limited in its controls, but it sounds good, and I think in this instance it does just job nicely. But I'll play it and you'll hear what we're doing there when these all come on. So you can see it's just providing that kind of, like we've gone under the sea kind of effect there. Wave Shape is doing a lot of the work there. It's really crunching things up. Again, another great plugin that just comes standard with FL Studio. I love it. You can do some really gnarly stuff with that. And keeping on percussion, we'll move on to the drums. Once again, I am using Modern and Massive 2. This time I'm using an edit of a preset called Anger. And I love this preset. This was one where as soon as I got this plugin, I loaded it up and I was like, I need to use this on as many songs as possible. And mostly it's because of this snare. It's just beautiful, poppy, ringy, open kind of just... It's so different to so many of the snares you hear in rock and metal these days. Don't get me wrong, I love the big, beefy, down-tuned, roomy snare, but there's something about this. Maybe it's the 2000s nu metal kid in me. I just want to put it on everything. All I've tweaked on this preset is swapping out a couple of the cymbals. From memory, I added in the China here. This is the Istanbul China, and I think I swapped out this crash for the Istanbul one. I can't remember if I swapped this out, but the UFIP Bionic Ride here is amazing. Such a good crash, such a good bell. I don't really use kind of the bow or the cymbal much articulation, a lot of my stuff, but the crash on it is great. In the mixer, all I've done is similar to what I did in Comeback When It's a Catastrophe, the preset there. Bring up the rooms a bit, just to add a bit of size and kind of weight to the overall feel. And I've thrown a little bit of parallel compression on the master bus output here. Again, just to kind of crunch things up a bit and make it all feel a bit bigger and weightier, which was really only needed because of how much other stuff is going on in the mix. Out of the box, the preset sounds great. This is just stuff to suit the song, really. I've also got this kick and snare send, which are going out to mixer channels 2 and 3, you can see here, which we're using for side chaining. So the drums on their own. And we've also got this instance of Fruity EQ, which has nothing happening on it. I think I was toying around adding some things here and there. And as is often the case, the plugin got left there, even though nothing is happening. So the drums by themselves sound amazing. I'll play them for you. You can enjoy, and then I'll drop the whole mix in, and you can just hear how this, along with the drum and bass percussion, is just such a good backbone for the song. We'll jump in and we'll just play that the main riff there. Just an amazing sounding drum plugin, and this kit and preset in particular, I just absolutely love. Yeah, I can't get over that snare. It's just, it's fantastic. I want to put it on everything. As far as the side chaining goes, pretty standard stuff. We're routing the kick out to the bass bus and also out to this low Reese synth. So the two elements that are kind of living down in the bottom end along with the bass, along with the kick drum. And very, very standard stuff on both of these. We are just using the kick side chain to duck everything below 100 hertz by about 3 dB over here on the Reese bass. We're doing a little bit more shaping of the bass overall, but you can see we're doing the same thing there. You'll see here over on the bass instance of TDR Nova, which is the EQ that we're using for this, there is a standing kind of cut of about 1.5 dB below 100 hertz, and primarily that's just to give the Reese bass room to exist. Without that very small cut there, these two can really easily tread on each other and you get a bit too much of a woofy bottom end. So speaking of bass, let's have a look at the bass guitar. If you've watched the mix breakdown video for Comeback When It's a Catastrophe, you'll know that I had a pretty overcomplicated bass signal chain going on there. For this song, much simpler. We've got 3 plugins doing the work. This instance of Fruity Balance is just taming the level a little bit at the end. The tone is coming from just these 3 plugins. So I really pared it back. I wanted something simpler. I didn't want to have to be fiddling around with all those different plugins if I needed to tweak the bass sound. So I've gone really dead simple here. I'll turn all of these off except for Fruity Balance and solo it so you can hear the DI. This one really shows up my shortcomings as a bass player. Everything's in time and the notes are right, but the consistency is not great. You can even see that from the waveform. So to rectify that, I'm going straight into the distressor here. And that is basically acting as a sausage machine for me. It's flattening out that performance and really giving it a lot more consistency. So we'll toggle that one off and on, and you'll hear what I mean. So you can hear it's really just catching all of those kind of surges in volume and leveling things out there. The settings were just kind of trial and error, really. I never want to go too quick attack on bass. I like having a little bit of that pick attack coming through, and similarly release, you don't want it whipping off too quickly. You get too much pumping. Input and output were just set until in the highest gain reduction sections. I kind of shoot for. I don't really want to go too much above kind of 6 or 7 dB of gain reduction. That's still pretty aggressive, and we're on a 6-to-1 ratio. But as I said, with a better bass player, you wouldn't need to use quite so much. And that is running into an instance of parallax. And this is where I would say 95% of the tone is coming from. We do have the transpose function on. I recorded this on a bass that was in D standard. The song is in E standard. So it does jump up to semitones. So I'll turn it off and toggle it on, and then probably just leave it on because going between the two tunings can be quite jarring. So I'll just do that once. But you'll hear as soon as this comes on, oh, there's the bass tone. Super aggressive, nice grindy bass tone sort of thing. Parallax does really, really beautifully. This is an edited version of a preset. So there's I'm trying to remember which artist now did it. It's the Toby Peterson Stewart. It's one of these almost B7K presets. I can't remember which one, which as they would suggest, aiming for that kind of dark glass microtubes B7K sound. And I've tweaked this slightly just to get the sound that I'm after. A trick that I've stolen from Josh Middleton is bringing the high filter right down over next to the mid. It just seems to affect everything in a much more pleasant way. It stops the high end from getting too out of control. This can really easily get super fizzy. Like, this is quite a top end heavy bass tone. I think it works in the context of the mix, but yeah, bringing that high crossover point right down, right next to the mid, or even lower than the mid in some cases, can be a really good move. For the low compression, I just have it absolutely dimed, and I bring the low crossover like quite a way up, pretty close to 200. Some songs will go even over, depending, tuning and the range that I want to work in. I like just having the low end absolutely pinned, adjust it with the level to get it to sit where I want to in the mix. I don't want any movement on that super low end, particularly when I'm trying to get it to work nicely with the huge low end that comes out of a respace. So we can see we're compressing it really hard. It's up pretty loud, and we're giving a little bit of a boost with the low shelf there. So I just really want plenty of that low end information to work with. And then I can shape it later like we're doing in that instance of Nova on the bus, where it's dropping down a couple of dB. Lots of mid distortion. That's the real kind of guts of this tone. And the mids are up pretty high. And on the high distortion, again, running quite a lot for this plugin. I never really go much beyond this on the high drive. I find it gets a bit too fizzy. And the highs are pulled back quite a lot because the guitars are a really crunchy sound. I don't want them getting too much in the way there. The cab settings, this is straight off the preset. The condenser 184 and the 57 right dead center of the cone, so you get all that lovely crunchy, grindy kind of sound. So yeah, really nice tone. EQ's not doing anything huge, just tiny bit of tone shaping to get it to sit right where I want it. And then the result of that is that when we get to this instance here of an EQ, we're not doing much at all. Little bit in the low mids around that kind of 100, 120 hertz range, just to stop it getting woofy, particularly with some of the chuggier parts where you're really hammering on that low string. So yeah, just quite a mild cut there, 1.5 to 2 dB. a high pass filter, only around 30 hertz. Again, just I don't want any sub stuff because I've got the respace for that. And that's it. That's the bass tone. I will toggle this on and off. But really what all you're going to hear is obviously that low mid cut, which is quite noticeable, I think. I find that's an interesting one because it's quite a small cut, but I think it has a really significant impact on the sound, and probably because, as you can see from the visualizer, there's a lot there. So cut a little bit of it, you're going to notice it. And the only other thing we're doing with the bass is another trick that I ran through in the Come Back When It's a Catastrophe video, and I have a short up about it on my channel. It is this bass source track, a trick that I have stolen unashamedly from Ermin Hamidovic, where you send that whole bass tone into a send channel. You use a linear phase EQ up to about 800 hertz so that you're filtering off all that low end. You're just affecting kind of mids and high mids. And we're running that into a nice wide stereo chorus. And so the effect of that is that it throws the top end of the bass out wide into where your hard left and right rhythm guitars are sitting. And it gets the bass to kind of enhance that. It has the effect of almost widening out the whole mix and making the rhythm guitars sound bigger because you're getting that top end of the bass to really work with them out on the sides, whilst you're not affecting any of your low end, so you still maintain that nice kind of clear center image that you want from your bass. This is another one that's just, I always set it up and do it, and it always works. So the trick there is you just blend it in so you can just hear it. I'll play it in solo and turn it off and you'll hear it quite clearly, but then I'll do it in the context of the mix and you'll hear it is subtle, but it's really, really nice. You can hear it's there. It's pretty easy to latch onto when it's in solo, but we play the whole mix. I'll turn it on and off. Try to focus on the rhythm guitars right out to the side. You'll really need either to be in headphones or on a really nice set of monitors for this, but try to focus in on that and you'll hear what it's doing. It almost ends up being like having a third rhythm guitar out in the sides. It's just really, really cool effect. If you've not tried it, highly recommend. So next up, guitars. This song is an absolute anomaly for me. 4 guitar layers. And we have one of them here, this wow layer, which is just an effects layer used in one part of the song. And then leads, which is a guitar solo in the lead part in the chorus for, I would say probably 75% of this song. It's just the left and right rhythms. And I don't think that was really a conscious thing. I think it's just how this song came out. It's obviously very kind of old school thrash inspired, a little bit of kind of Mastodon inspiration there, and some of the riffs with the open strings and whatnot. I was listening to a lot of Sylosis when I wrote this, so this is my poor attempt at trying to write a Josh Middleton riff. And a lot of that music is not necessarily a big wall of guitars. I know Sylosis tend to quad track, but in essence, you're just having that kind of left and right rhythm guitar holding down the fort, working closely with the bass, and then you have leads come in. And so that's what this song kind of wound up feeling like it needed, just because of the vibe. So I didn't add a whole bunch of layers in here because I never felt like I needed to. The core rhythm tone is coming out of Archetype Nolly, and this is based off a preset that comes with the plugin called Tight Metal Rhythm. As I've done with a lot of presets, I just tweaked this to suit what I needed for the track. I did some adjustments on the overdrive just to get kind of a nice bit of bite and cut that I wanted, and a couple of minor changes on the amp settings. And I think from the EQ, I hardly changed anything. I think that was fine as it was in the preset. Same for the cab settings. It's just a 57 in the traditional location, just off the edge of the dust cap. This preset, or the preset that I loaded up, that's our Tight Metal Rhythm, just worked really nicely with the guitar that I was using. This was done with my Artist Guitars Skylar. The pickups in that just played so nicely with this preset. Didn't need much tweaking at all. So I'll play the rhythm guitars. by themselves, and I'll turn off the rhythm bus processing. We'll get to that in a sec. So the raw tone coming out of the amp sim for the main rhythms sounds like this. Overdrive pedal into a 5150, into a V30 speaker cab. You can't really go wrong. There's a reason that everyone does it. Now those rhythms are running into the rhythm bus where there is quite a lot of processing going on. Now when you start with a nice raw tone, the processing doesn't need to be very heavy duty. But then because there's a lot of other elements in this song, that's where you have to really start shaping it and focusing the guitars into where I want them to sit in the mix. So we'll go through point by point on this, and I'll turn these on and off so you can hear what's going on. So first up, we have this kind of surgical shaping EQ. We have this really drastic cut at just over 6K. It probably doesn't need to be this deep, but that's just where I've wound up with it. I'll pop this on and off, and then I'll pop just this filter on and off. I do remember doing this. There is a real nasty kind of sound up there that the overall tone sounds great and you don't notice it until you take it out and you go, oh, okay, that was actually not very nice to have. Similarly, there's quite a deep cut here around 2.4K. That's a pretty standard kind of cab resonance frequency. You always get something a bit ugly, kind of these whistling frequencies coming out around sort of 2 to 2.5K. Little bit of a low mid scoop. I don't like having an egregious amount of mid-range in the raw guitar tone. I'll add some of that in later if I want it, and I definitely do that when we get to the channel strip there. But just kind of keeping it under control primarily. There's a lot of kind of quick palm muting in this, so just kind of ducking a little bit of that out just for the sake of controlling it on the way through. And then another trick that I've stolen from Josh Middleton, where we do a pretty heavy dip around 100 hertz, which is that kind of sine wavy woofy frequency that you tend to get with palm mutes. And the effect that has is it kind of accentuates these frequency ranges either side, which are actually really nice. So below it, you've got that kind of 80 hertz kind of oomph. It's that real kind of punch in the gut sound, really good on the palm mutes in particular. And then just above it is the sort of lower end of the low mids. And you still do want some of that again. Sounds really nice on the palm mutes, and notching this out just stops it from getting too woofy and woolly. Really listen to that top end. Those whistling frequencies will jump right out at you once I turn this on and off. And just listen specifically for this one here. I'll turn just this notch off and on. Yeah, you can hear it's just not nice, but similar to what we're doing down here with this dip at 100, by doing this kind of big notch there, we're emphasizing the frequencies either side. And just below this notch, you've got a lot of the pick attack, which I definitely wanted plenty of. And above it, you've got that kind of air in the guitar tone, which again, we don't want to be strangling out of it. So it looks a bit excessive. It probably is, but it works. So I've left it there. And next up, we've got an instance of the good old SSL channel strip, another plugin that I use constantly. So here we're doing nothing too massive, just a couple of quite minor EQ moves. So we're adding in a little bit of the upper mids. So we've got this centered around 4K. This is, again, accentuating pick attack. That's really what I wanted. I wanted this one to really bite. It's quite a fast riff, particularly in the sections where we've got the quick palm mutes, just kind of really bringing that forward, bringing that up. And then down here, we've got a bell EQ centered on 60 hertz. And that's just kind of doing a little bit more of what we were talking about with the EQ, with that notch and the kind of humps either side of it. We're just lifting that whole range up a bit. So the notch is still there to take out some of that 100 hertz. And then this boost is just making sure there's still plenty of oomph, particularly in those palm mutes. So we'll turn this one on and off. You'll hear what it's doing there. It's working really kind of in concert with that previous EQ. So you can hear that pick attack really coming out, but it's bringing it out with that harsh 6.1K already notched out of it. So it's just bringing out the good stuff that we've left in it. Now I'll go along to this kind of chugging section and listen to the low end, and you'll hear what that 60 hertz boost is doing. Just real nice, tight, chuggy palm mutes. Big fan. And that's quite a common thing to do actually with this this channel strip EQ, flipping the low end to a bell. You don't always want a shelf on the bottom end. You don't necessarily want to be bringing up a whole bunch of rumbly sub information, particularly on an instrument like a metal rhythm guitar in E standard. There's nothing below 60 hertz that you're particularly interested in. After that, we've got another instance of JST EQ. Now this one is just a pretty stock standard low pass filter, bringing it down to about 12K, just controlling a little bit of that top end. It's not coming down low enough that you're losing all the air in the tone, but it is getting rid of stuff that could be interfering with like some of the drum and bass percussion and things like that. And it's important to emphasize all of these moves are being made in the context of the whole mix. I'm playing them to you here in solo because that's the easiest way to hear what they're doing. But I've made them listening to the instruments with everything else going on. I think that's really important. I'm not the only person to subscribe to this philosophy, but you don't mix in solo. You'll just bash your head up against a wall. We've also got this dynamic band here, which is receiving a side chain from the snare. So it's just ducking the rhythm guitars a little bit, just by a couple of dB, whenever there's a snare hit in that kind of 1K range. And that's just to give that kind of upfront in-your-face sound to the snare, just enhance that a little bit. It's a really quick duck, so it's not like the guitars are pumping in and out. I think it's barely audible. Barely. But in the context of the mix, we'll turn that one on and off, and I think it really does help the snare pop through, so we'll bring that one back up. I'll turn it on and off. Yeah. Tell me what you think. I think it just helps the snare get sort of right up in the face on each hit. But you might think I'm talking absolute bollocks, and that is fine. I think it works. Following that, we have the Masker. Now, I spoke about this on the Comeback When It's a Catastrophe mix breakdown. This is just Track Spacer for free. It's made by Italian uni students, and it does what Track Spacer does. This is just in operation anywhere where we've got some lead guitar playing, and it's just carving out a little bit of space in the mids and upper mids for the lead guitar to really cut through. So I'll play this with the whole mix. Watch that purple line and you'll see the frequencies that this is acting on. Nothing drastic, but it just helps that lead sit really nicely in the mix and not fight with the rhythm guitars too much without having to get too crazy with, really surgical EQ, etc. It's a, you could use Track Spacer. There's a Waves equivalent now. There's a bunch of different plugins that do this, but that one's free, so why not use it? And then to finish off, we've got another instance of good old SSL bus compressor. This one is just doing a bit of glue. Really, really simple. We're not doing anything massive. 4:1 ratio, second slowest attack, and a moderately fast release. Pretty standard for distorted guitar compression settings or bus compression settings. We'll start with it off and turn it on. And I'll play a section where the lead's not going to get in the way. Just really brings it all together. Classic kind of, bus glue compressor. Yeah. Hey, sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the video, I'd really appreciate it if you give us a like and a subscribe. I'm going to keep more of these mix breakdown and mixing tips videos coming, so I'd love to see you in the comments section in this one and future videos. Thanks very much. Back to the breakdown. Now, onto the lead guitars. There's really only one lead guitar channel. The tone for this is super simple. I'll just switch off the bus processing and we'll have a look in the EQ. Once again, we're in archetype Nolly, this time using a tone that I've made myself from scratch. For a change, I didn't just grab a preset and change it. So this is using the lead head, which I believe is based on a Victory Kraken, if I'm not mistaken. And we're running that into the Marshall style cabinet, 57 on one speaker, in the usual spot just outside the dust cap, and the 414 on the other side just to kind of fill out the tone. That one's quite a bit quieter, but it definitely adds something there. We'll find a nice bit of lead, and I'll show you what that tone sounds like just by itself. Just really super saturated, really bitey. Love the way that this amp sounds on leads. Got a decent amount of compression on the way in, using the Tube Screamer style overdrive with the bright switch on. The bright switch in this edition of the plugin's fantastic. Not too much drive, mostly using it for level and the tone to add a little bit of bite. On the amp itself, not doing anything too outrageous, pushing this output nice and hard and the master volume up quite high. At a certain point with these, you just start getting more power amp saturation. The volume doesn't actually get any louder, and that's kind of where I think a lot of the magic in this particular amp is from. And EQ wise, nothing too drastic, just boosting some frequencies around the top end, particularly around that kind of 1.5K, which is sort of in-your-face sound, just to really get it to jump out of the speakers and sit up on top of the mix, and a little bit of delay, just because it makes it sound nice. The only other guitar track that we've got is this very informatively titled Bweow track. Now, as I mentioned, this is just an effect track that's used in one part of the song, and it's just here, where we're panning it left to right. I'll solo it out and you'll hear what it's doing by itself. And it's just that open string with a bit of whammy bar, and then we're panning it left and right. And it's just a little bit of ear candy for this section. In the first time this riff comes around, it has the solo over it. So this is just to give it a little bit of something interesting. I'll play it with the whole mix, see if you can pick it out. Like I said, it's just a nice little bit of ear candy there. Just fun. Just good fun there. So onto the wall of synths we've got here. Now, as with Come Back When It's Catastrophe, there's a lot of synths going on, but they're all serving a really specific purpose. I'm not going to go too deep into sound design here. It's not that kind of, not intended to be that kind of video. Also, for most of these, I just loaded up a preset and then tweaked it to do what I needed it to do in the mix. So I'll go through these in kind of a logical order, not necessarily top to bottom, but just kind of talk through what they're doing in the mix more than necessarily how to recreate the sound. The one that I've already mentioned is this respace here. And primarily that's just doubling the bass and filling out kind of the super low end. And a little bit sort of across the mid-range. That's using the GMS, the Groove Machine synthesizer in FL Studio, and just using this respace preset. I don't think I've changed anything. So this is more or less how it sounds out of the box. And as you can see, we're scooping out a bit in the mids, in sort of around that 1K region and the low mids, but leaving the high end in there. There is actually a reasonable amount of kind of growl in the upper mids. And as I mentioned earlier, that all of the sub content in terms of the bass is coming from this synth. Yeah, just provides that kind of locked in low end. Really, really, really handy there. I'll show you actually. I'll turn that EQ on and off, and you can hear how that's shaping the sound. You can see how we're not really losing much of that growl, even though we're notching out, even though we're scooping quite heavily around the 1K region, we've still got that kind of growl from it. This is just kind of stopping it getting too woofy and having too much build up in that low mid area, which is always a risk when you've got a really dense mix. Next up, we've got Confusing, the one I've labeled here as Straight Arp, which is actually the bouncy arp channel in the playlist, and then the bounce arp is actually the straight arp in the playlist. Don't ask me how it wound up like that. When I was doing the synths for this, it was all pretty chaotic. I was throwing a lot of sounds in it to see what would stick. So I think things got a little bit crossed up there. But anyway, that one sounds like this. And that's coming out of Toxic Biohazard, which is another FL Studio synth, and leaning really hard on the sequencer here. This is a synth which, for some reason, has a UI that makes it look so much more complicated than it is. Once you crack the UI, it's actually a really usable synth that produces some really interesting sounds, this being one of them. So, yeah, I put in the time here to understand the UI and get that sound happening. And where that one kind of lives in the mix, if we listen to this in the whole mix. It's quite subtle when there's everything else going on. You hear it in that top end, that little dun 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 dun. It's there. You notice it when it's gone, and that's the main idea there. That's really busy riff, so I didn't actually want anything too in your face there. I wanted the riff to be the focus. And then what actually happens is we move into the verse, where a slightly tweaked version of that same ARP sound is being used. Again, leaning really heavily on the sequencer. And that one sounds like this. So you can hear there that we're using the same basic sound. We're just changing the sequencing to get a slightly different rhythm from it. On both of these, we're doing EQing to boost the top end because that's where we really want it to live, and rolling off quite a lot of bottom end. I believe this one has basically the same, a little bit more of a scoop there, just because of the point of the song that we're using it. And this one is actually quite a lot more up front because it lives in those gaps in this riff. If we listen to the riff here. You can see it's really sort of filling in those gaps, and that continues sort of through even when we get to the more chuggier riff. You can still hear it kind of, pounding away. Still there, kind of chugging along, providing that again, momentum. This song is all about kind of lurching forward constantly, and a lot of these synths being quite rhythmic. That's the main point of them. That's what they're doing. And on that note, we've got this one that's labeled as pad, which I guess it still kind of is a pad, but again, it's a rhythmic pad. So if we listen to that here. Just constant 16th notes, it's movement, 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 movement. It also is producing that kind of almost drum and bassy kind of movement in the bottom end, if you listen really carefully. There's some resonance happening down there that I wasn't intended by any stretch, but I think it's certainly cool. You really only notice it when it's playing by itself, like in the very intro of the track, but I think it's cool to have that there. That one's also being done with GMS based on a preset called Pulsar. I know I tweaked this one quite a lot, but I can't remember what I tweaked, and I didn't take any notes, so apologies for that. But that's a nice little kind of layer there. Again, filling out that top end, putting some information up there, working alongside the drum and bass percussion, but with a decent old scoop here around that kind of, again, that 1.5 or 1 to 1.5K range, just sitting it back a little bit. We don't want it interfering with that really crowded mid-range with the guitars. Following on from that, we have this drone pad. This was a fairly late addition to the song. I just felt like this intro riff needed something else to add a bit of ambience, I guess. By itself, this one sounds like this. It's more of a kind of typical pad. It's called Choir because it was a choir preset within Citrus here. Again, it's another one I've tweaked quite a lot. Not so much in the operators, but certainly in the effects and the filter to get the sound where I want it. But it's not a million miles away from what the original preset was. It's mostly just getting it to sit where I need it to in the mix. And once again, we're EQing it to put it where we want it. Quite an aggressive low pass there, up in the top around 13K. And again, scooping out a lot of that mid-range so that we're not cluttering it up too much and treading all over the guitars. And last of all, in the synth layers, we have this spacey pad, which is only used in the final chorus. And again, it's just another ear candy piece. We've already had a chorus. This second one, the lead guitar line changes a bit, but this is just a nice extra layer to differentiate it from the previous chorus. I'm not usually a big fan of just having, the exact same section copy and paste, I'll copy and paste it and then add something, which, that's how I get away with it anyway. And that particular one sounds like this. And that's using this instance of Harmer, I believe. This is Harmer. Is this Harmer or Harmless? I can never remember. It's one of them. Again, this one is based on a preset that I found. Minor tweaks on this one, mostly just kind of getting more distortion into it. Wanted it to feel a bit sort of overdriven and bitey. And we're panning that one left and right. At the same time, this panning automation is also panning the drone right and left, sort of inversely. So if we play the drone and that spacey pad together, you'll hear them kind of swapping sides. Like I said, ear candy. Just makes that last chorus sound a bit bigger, a bit more dramatic. And a lot of these synths are running into, I say a lot, I think a few of them are running into this instance of Luxverb, which is running a shimmer reverb. I do this a lot, adding a really just quite a low level, quite subtle shimmer reverb. Again, just adds kind of ambience and size. So if we solo all of the synths and I'll turn the synth verb, this shimmer verb on and off, we're also EQing it, which is pretty standard. Just focus the reverb where we want it so it doesn't muddy up the mix too much, or at all, preferably. So we'll play this and I'll turn the verb on and off and you'll hear what that's doing. It's just this nice kind of ambience to everything. Not too busy, not too massive, but we'll do that again in the context of the whole mix. And you'll hear it again. It's that most of that kind of top end, upper mid information way out on the sides. You really do notice it. It's another one that I feel like you don't necessarily know it's there. Like you wouldn't sort of point to it and go, you've got a shimmer reverb on all the synths. It's just a nice ambient layer that adds a bit of size and complexity to the overall sound in a really, I think, a really nice way. Now over here on the far right, we have the effects channels. These are all pretty standard. We've got an 808, we've got a boom sound and a nice kind of whooshy reverse cymbal into a cymbal. I'll solo these out here. You can hear what they're doing. We just do this when we're transitioning between parts of the song. There are definitely better samples out there that you can use for this. I grabbed these fairly quickly just from the FL Studio pack. If anyone knows any good places to get some good sort of impact and transition samples like this, chuck it in the comments, please. I would love to source some, I guess some more modern sounding, some slightly better ones. Pretty stock standard, and we've just got that happening in a couple of places where we're moving between sections of the song. So on to the final section of this mix breakdown, which is mastering. So I'll turn this limiter off because we don't want to be running that into the mastering chain. And all of the mastering has been done in Ozone 11. I haven't upgraded yet. And I kind of cheated on this one in that I took a bounce of Come Back When It's a Catastrophe, which was completed before this song. Working title of that one was Jungle is Massive. And flew that into Ozone and said, get me something that sounds like this, because I really liked what Ozone had done with that one. And this is the signal chain it spat out. So we've got an EQ doing a reasonable boost up in the top end and a little boost down in the subs, which is fine. I didn't hear it doing anything outrageous when I turned it on and off. This one in the middle is doing bugger all. I don't know why it's there, but I just left it there because it's harmless. He can hang out there. On the imaging side, pretty standard stuff, monoing out the low end below 120 hertz quite a lot, enhancing the sides and the upper mids and the top end. All pretty normal stuff. The stabilizer, which is, I kind of look at this as sort of like a Gullfoss style module, is not doing tons. just kind of tickling in the upper mids and high end and a little bit down the low end. Generally with these mastering assistant outputs, my rule of thumb is that if I see big adjustments happening, that's when I need to worry, because it means either the robot's gone rogue or there's something wrong in my mix that I need to go and fix. It's usually the latter. The robot's pretty good. So as long as I'm not seeing any huge adjustments, I'm not really panicking. This one looks big, but when we hit play, you'll see that none of these dynamic EQ points are really doing more than 1 dB of adjustment. And even then, it's very occasionally nudging over that. See, again, it's just tickling those particularly busy areas of the spectrum, particularly this mid-range. I'm not surprised that there's some dynamic EQ needed there. It's a very, very busy area of the spectrum in this track. And the maximizer is doing its thing, making it loud. IRC4 modern here. It just sounds really good. I really like the way this one sounds. So this was chosen by default by the robot, but I probably would have changed it to this anyway. This is, we're running it pretty hard, because I want it to be really loud and punchy and in your face. And I've got the output at true peak at -0.3. I do this with all of my masters. The default, it has true peak off and it's at -0.1. This is just something I do out of habit. It's a guaranteed protection against digital overages. I don't know if it's necessary, but I do it every single time now. A little bit of upwards compression just to kind of, I guess, make it a bit less dynamic, but punchier and louder, which is what I was after. No soft clipping. We've got the stereo independence off and no transient emphasis, because I think the transients in this one are doing just fine on their own. I don't think we need to be helping them in this case. So I'll toggle this on and off with the gain match on, so you can hear tonally what it's doing. I think it's really noticeable, but not in a way that makes you think it's changing the mix. It still very much feels like it's just mastering as opposed to trying to paper over cracks in the mix. And then we'll do a headphone warning. I'll turn off the gain match and you can hear the volume that it's pumping out just for fun. Really nice, subtle but noticeable, and it's all positive. It's not doing anything that I don't like. Consider this the headphone warning. I'm going to turn off gain match now, put it in bypass, and when I drop it in, you'll hear what almost 10 dBs into the maximizer does for your loudness. Just great finishing touch. Honestly, one of the best investments I made was getting Ozone Standard. Honestly, even if all you can afford is the Elements version, which gets you just this mastering assistant, it can be worth it. You can absolutely get usable results with just that. So anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you either learned something or were inspired to go and try something in a song or a project that you're working on. If there's anything you'd like to see me cover in more detail, or any topics that you think would be good to use in a future video, please do throw it in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give us a like, give us a subscribe. I'm really looking forward to doing more of these. I'm going to do another one for the third track off the EP. As I said, streaming links are all in the description below. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.